Alright, due to me talking like a boring mother effer and my voice being monotone as heck, I'm gonna do this in a single goddamn take with all my English mistakes, with all my ums, s's, p's, and all that great stuff, but I'll try to make it more interesting for you guys. So, welcome back to the campaign diaries, where we pick up where the party left off. They descended into the Underdark using a mining outpost's elevator, where they destroy the elevator. Plot twist, I know, because they did not want any monsters to go up into the mining outpost and kill off any workers they, had at this point, because they had a deal with the mayor of Midford that the mining outpost would belong to them if they freed it. They left Stephen, the goblin friend, in charge instead of them, which was a great decision. And after starting to travel in the Underdark, they encountered their first human, Ethril, the Drow Underdark Ranger. This was the same player who played Manwild, the Ranger Warlock, who decided to leave and retire his character, and he decided to play a Drow Ranger to help out with the current quest. The party, of course, was not immediately friendly with Ethril, because, it's the Underdark, he's a Drow, but because we know that the character is a player character, we suspend our disbelief. They spent hours traveling through tunnels when they eventually arrived in a shroom forest with a massive cavern. Imagine like from Ice Age 3 with the dinosaurs, when they enter into the underworld and they see a lush forest under the ice with an ice dome, something like that. When they traveled through there, I wanted to pay attention to how weird this world is with all the fungi. I even tried playing with their perception and told them that they see a beholder shape in a distance in the shadows and they were preparing to attack it, and it turns out it's a gas spore. And the monster manual even mentions that they look like beholders and they were born from beholders, but that's not the point. They encountered shriekers that they could trigger and get ambushed by other creatures, meat-eater plants, and they, after traveling for many hours and fighting their way through, they settled down to rest. At this point, I had read through a lot of Underdark resources, not specifically descriptions, but what other people use, and I had found a table that they would roll for parasites and insects, because the Underdark is weird like that. And I decided that each time at a camp or an unsafe place, players would roll, and one of the players would get a roll on this table. And Nether, the elf, got a roll, and I rolled basically for a worm that wiggles into your brain. And I told him that you sense something wiggling into your ear, and you can even sense the tail still outside. And he tried to grab it with a dexterity saving throw, but he failed, and the worm wiggled into his brain. And he didn't really see an effect. The effect was hidden until discovered in play, but it was meant to be a scientist worm that translates any language, but eats away at your brain, and so does eat away at your life expectancy. Which, in retrospect, seems stupid because Nether was an elf. But then, hey, you can play with this idea in other campaigns, and wouldn't elves then open themselves to more dangerous things, like these brain-eating worms, that the worms would eat away at just, let's say, 10 years of your life, but then you would gain unlimited amount of understanding of languages? So that didn't pan out how I wished, and they quickly reached another city with an advantage, with a guide, a Nothic by the name of Gaizo, who guided them for stories and magic items. This Nothic was almost a one-to-one Nothic from the Monster Manual, a Far Realm researcher who went mad with the secrets. And I put in the Nothic and even told the players who rolled high enough on their history checks and arcana checks that there are wizards mentioned in the secret and old rumors that go mad from researching these planes. And I did that because Midford's wizard, who is kidnapped, also dabbles in Far Realm things, in the Far Realm. And I was planning to introduce some of the symptoms that the Nothic had in the Mage of Midford. and so the players would catch on somehow, but that comes in later. So the Nothic started to guide them through the expansive caverns. They went through a field of poisonous gas, they were chased by displacer beasts, and in this chase they stumbled upon a temple of Elistray with a riddle lock. They entered the temple and it was a mini dungeon. I focused this on MacLeod. He had to put other worshippers of his goddess to rest because this temple was desecrated. They had to kill the Drider, which desecrated the temple, and for it MacLeod got a blessing from Elistray herself, a speed boon, which is written down in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I believe, which gives players like 10 or 15 more feet of movement, which for a monk is ridiculous, and I should have given him, because he later on could move like 120 feet around. After that, they reached Golzad, a Duergar city mixed with Drow. They immediately went to talk to the council about killing the Aboleth, but since this is the Underdark and none of these people care, they were pushed out. They found a friend that was also seeking to kill the Aboleth, but they quickly found out that the friend was an Oni, a spy for the Aboleth. After they left the city with a caravan led by this spy, they killed him and then went on their own. They ran into some old ruins that I just scattered in as a panoramic, as a detail in their travels that I had not planned actually. This was the first for me. I decided that they would find a ruin and they asked, well, what is the ruin about? And I told that it is in an old language in a version of Draconic that you do not fully recognize. And at that point I decided that maybe there is more to the dragons and the dragonborn kin in this continent that the recent history depicts them as conquerors and aliens to this continent. Maybe there's more, who knows. In their further travels, they were ambushed by Duergar, and a few of them were captured. The rest of the party went to a diplomatic mission, not to rescue the remaining two who were captured, and in this way they made an alliance with the Duergar, because Duergar were also suffering from the Aboleth. They were let go and directed to Bolin, another town of Duergar who were closer. When they went to Bolin, they were treated as prisoners naturally, but quite quickly they were let go and led into the fortress. On their way they saw a Grell hive, a massive electrical center from which electrical wires were strung all around the town. And I described as they walk, they see electrical sparks go through the town, they hear clanking of hammers, they hear sparks and all of those noises that are familiar and strange to them. And when they were led into the castle, they were immediately met by a storm giant, Jerzak, which just sounds wrong, but that was his name. He was a Blazing Eye officer, a quite high-ranking one. And so he offered the party to join. Of course, the party neglected, but they were on a mission to kill the Aboleth, and the Blazing Eye had the same interest. The Aboleth was a hurdle in their path of domination of the continent, and so Jerzak, the Storm Giant, acting as an ambassador here, he decided that he would cooperate with the party. He gave them lightning javelins that they were making here using the Grell hive, because Grell have this electric capability, and so I thought, how would this monster influence the world? And I thought, hey, what if a lot of these Grell could collect into a hive and almost like bees instead of honey, they would make electricity. And you know who would be best to harness this? A storm giant. They were also led in and informed that the druid that was Oak's mentor for the first test, that the Archwitch of Trident, Pringles, or Pringes, as it was intended, also the Mage of Windnest and Midfort were here. That these Duergar were the ones who kidnapped the mages because they needed someone to research the Aboleth. And a deal was struck that if the Aboleth was killed, the mages would have been let go and they would all go their separate ways. The party ventured into Snizidub, the town that they were told was the center of the Aboleth. However, they found the city inhabited by Snurf Niblin, who were all mind-controlled, by the Aboleth. They stealthed into the town and managed to get into the Aboleth's lair, which they found to be this flipped room of water going up, making columns and swirling all around, not stopping to move. They pushed into the room unnoticed, but once they started the fight with the Aboleth quickly summoned his minions. In a 300 movie style, they just made a wall in a corridor and then just started to slaughter the Snurfniblin that were coming their way. This battle was quite poorly executed from my point of view. It was a tough fight. It came close, but I could have used the Aboleth in a different way, more tactically. Plus the room I had drawn myself, and it was hard to depict. And it was hard to depict the way that the water was going up, that the room was flipped and it was warped by the far realm. But they won the fight. It was still a fun encounter, and the party got back to Bolin with one casualty, that it was a new NPC that they quite liked. It was a bard that they managed to preserve their body and then later try to resurrect. Before going back to the surface, they went back to Bolin to celebrate, which I described was very strange for them, that the whole celebration was very strict, very militaristic, that the Durgar were just sitting in rows, tapping their feet as the music played, but the music was basically elevator music, and it was very strict, very strange. They went to talk to Jerzak about the Blazing Eye. They pretended that they wanted to join to gather as much information as they could, and then they left. And when all of them left back to Midfort, all seemed clear, but when they got back, more bad news awaited. And that's where we will pick up next time. My friends, see you around.